Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. Christian Clemente here, joined by Jason Caldwell. Philip Duke should be with us here shortly, as we've got a really, really loaded recruiting podcast with a bunch of stuff to talk about. Jason, we saw the transfer portal madness already get started on Monday. The portal doesn't technically open up until December 4th. I believe that's next Monday. But a week ahead, graduate transfers are able to get in, along with kids from the FCS level, or if a head coach leaves the school, they're also able to depart early. So we saw Auburn extend some offers to a couple offensive linemen yesterday. Also saw a commitment that popped up pretty quickly after visiting for the weekend. We've seen Auburn have a couple of reserve linemen enter the portal as well, and obviously, there's a lot of other recruiting news as well, so we're here to break it all down. There's a bunch of questions already in the chat. We're going to try and get to everyone that asks a question in the chat. That's the whole goal of going through these live shows, is let y'all kind of dictate what we're talking about and answer y'all's questions. Before we get into that, if you're watching this live and you're not a member of auburnundercover.com, you have about 2.5 hours or so to take advantage of the best deal of the year that we're running right now. 75% off an annual sub, gets you all the way until, should get you through football season next year. Oh, there's Dukes. What up, Dukes?
What up?
But yeah, make sure to join us at 75% off, and you can get everything that we're already talking about on this podcast over at Auburn Undercover. So, without further ado, Jason, I think where we should probably start, Dukes, there's a little bit of a, there we go. Got it. Jason, I think we should probably start with Kalen Edwards, the 2025 defensive line commit. That's the most, probably the biggest technical news, I guess you could say. Auburn picking up the 4-star defensive lineman from Tennessee, visited for the Georgia game, visited for the Alabama game. Saw him there on the sidelines before the game. He's absolutely massive. Talked to someone at Auburn on Sunday. They said they really, really liked him. And on Monday, he joined the commitment list for 2025.
Yeah. The first thing you look at is Jeremy Garrett's a grown man. And that's the coach on the right and the junior in high school on the left. That gives you an idea of his size. Big physical body inside. And man, you just look at it, kind of what he brings to the table. And he's kind of one of those guys that can be a space eater at times, but I gave him a little bit of an Angelo Blackson comparison yesterday. When you look at him, the guy that you look and you go, you see the athleticism, hands are there, but obviously still just a junior in high school. So a lot of physical power, and I think lower body power still to come, because guys like that they can do what they want to because they're big. I think that's still to come for this guy, but you look at now thinking about him and Malik Autry, who's a massive human being already as a junior in high school at Opelika, who's committed. Jordan Crawford, who we'll get to see this week, is 6'2", 305, and can get up field and is already a guy that is built like a fullback, but he weighs 300 pounds. I mean, he is rock solid. That's a really good start to a 2025 defensive line class. And then you think about what you have in Caleb Falk as potentially an edge guy or jack linebacker in this system already too in 2025. And it's a really, really good group to build around so far.
Yeah, Jason, we were talking about it with someone, the 2024 class, kind of tough timing for Auburn staff. And, the 2023 cycle was pretty loaded in terms of defensive line talent. The Quay Rousseaus, the James Smith, Peter Woods, TJ Parker, all those guys. And, this staff arrives right at the end of that cycle, and the 2024 cycle's a little down compared to that and compared to 2025. And Auburn's kind of hoping to load up in 2025. And you're already seeing that now with Autry and Edwards and Jordan Crawford, like you mentioned. Hit another question from the chat. Of course, this is going to be one of the very first questions. Figured it was coming. Dukes, could someone tell me that that Auburn will get Cam Coleman? Obviously, the news today of Damen Craig not being retained on Texas A&M's staff under Mike Elko is pretty significant there, as Auburn continues to really, really, really make a push for the 5-star wide receiver out of Central.
Yeah, I got a really good source that feels really, 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 really good about Cam Coleman. I was going to talk about that a little bit, and I got a Duke Scoop
Don't
article.
tip too much. Then we're gonna have a Duke Scoops at Auburn Undercover, but
Okay. Yeah, I can't tell you that he's coming, but I can say there are some very in the know people who would be very surprised if he doesn't.
there you go. Yeah, this is. I mean, Jason, we saw it today with Auburn extending a preferred walk-on offer to Dylan Gentry, who's a slot receiver out of Central. Close friends with Cam. The past 2 weekends when Cam has visited, Dylan Gentry has been there as well, and so Auburn extended a PWO to him, kind of the way I put it on the board, sweeten the pot a little bit, and get a guy that they like as a contributor in practice, kind of as well in Gentry.
Yeah, could be it could be a Will Hastings guy down the road. I mean, he could be a guy that gives you some depth in the slot, do some things. He's quick, and he's had some knee injuries, I think, in the past, but he's had a really good season, and so yeah, it surely doesn't hurt because those are guys you need anyway, and to do that and bring in a guy with Cam Coleman, if that's what happens, would be huge. But I agree with you because it feels like it's trending more and more towards Auburn for Cam Coleman, and pretty good position to be in when you look at it. And a guy that's made what was it, 4 visits in about a span of about 9 or 10 days at Auburn, to do that and to spend a bunch of time with guys, is obviously doesn't hurt Auburn's chances.
Yeah, one guy that was in on an official visit this weekend, the Tyler Justice from the chat wanted to talk about. Jason, I'm going to go back to you with this one because you talked with him. Roger Saliapaga, the tight end from Orem, Utah, I believe. Orem, Utah. You talked with him. He's going to have a decision in just a couple of days on Friday, and you're able to get kind of a feel for what he was thinking and how Auburn kind of felt as well in this recruitment.
Yeah, I think going into it, he didn't tell me this. He called me, I think, 10:30 Sunday night. So when he got back to Utah after a long travel day, lots of Thanksgiving traffic to deal with, it felt like that he probably came, but not thinking Auburn was really going to be in the picture. It felt like, probably Oregon was going to be the team to beat coming in. But I think Auburn at least gave him something to think about with his visit. The question is what does it look like for Auburn at the tight end position? Because a lot of that may depend on what happens with Luke Deal and Brandon Frazier. I think Rivaldo Fairweather will be back. I don't know that Tyler Fromm is, but you have, Mike O'Reilly that's already there as well. If you were to bring back, Mike O'Reilly and Rivaldo Fairweather and Luke Deal and Brandon Frazier, then you might not have a spot for a guy like this right now. So a lot of that made, I think they're probably trying to work out through some of those things. As Hugh Freeze told us on Monday, the next 3 or 4 days for them would be spent figuring out what this roster was going to look like. And as Christian, as you hinted a little bit, we've already seen some guys that have said, hey, I'm going to be going in the portal, or guys, I'm going in the portal. I think he was pretty honest and said, look, there's some guys that we'll have to tell that, hey, we probably don't see you fitting in to what we want to do from a playing standpoint. So lots of juggling going on right now with the roster, but this guy they really like. But it may depend on a numbers game for Auburn right now, because there may be positions of need that are in greater need, at certain spots around the field.
Well, we just talked about it. We just talked about it at receiver. Auburn got 3, and for a little bit there, it felt like you roll with 3 and maybe add one more. But if you're Auburn and you feel like you can get Cam Coleman, and you feel like Ryan Williams is going to reclassify, and you feel like you've got a chance there as well,
you take every one of them.
Yeah,
say, hey guys, all guys, come on in, and we'll take every one of you. Let's go.
Yeah, so then you maybe sacrifice the tight end spot because you feel like you've got good numbers there for next season. Or, we were talking about it on the message board, I think yesterday. Maybe you sacrifice a running back because you just don't feel like you need to take one because you feel like everybody's going to be back. So
yeah, that's it. Yes, you're the same situation. Jarquez Hunter, if you go, how you feel, Jarquez feel good about him coming back. Damari Austin coming back. Obviously, Brian Batiste already transferred. You got Jeremiah Cobb. You got Sean Jackson. You go, hey, if that entire room says, hey, let's run it back, then you've got places that are a bigger need than running back at the moment.
Yes, and you feel pretty good about this guy, Alvin Henderson, in 2025 as well. Question from Steve Martin. How do you feel about Coen Eckles? Dukes, this is another Texas A&M commit. He was in, I don't know how long he ended up making it in. I don't know if it was a full weekend trip or not, but saw him on Saturday. This has been one of Auburn's top offensive line targets really throughout the whole process. He is a Texas A&M legacy. I don't believe his dad played football there, but he went to Texas A&M. He's from that area. So obviously there's staff overhaul at A&M. I think it was revealed earlier tonight, just an hour or two ago, that the offensive line coach would not be retained. But more so than Cam Coleman, this felt like this was going to be less affected by the coaching change at A&M, if that makes sense. It was going to be more so what can Auburn do to put the Tigers over the top. And this visit this past weekend was really kind of one of the last chances for the staff to try and make a splash.
Yeah, I feel like the staff feels like they did a pretty good job with this visit. I think that they also know they're up against, the distance, the territory he's from. Also that he wasn't like, to your point, you get some guys who are more so the I'm committed to a coach. He felt like it feels like Eckles was more committed to that school. So I think that he would be a priority for Mike Elko, especially with what they want to do on offense. So if I had to do a percentage chance for me personally, in my opinion, I would say maybe a 30 to 40%, if at best right now. I think there is some uphill ground for Auburn to make up, but I also don't feel like Auburn is out of it. And I say this all the time, but Hugh Freeze is probably one of the scariest guys for opposing coaches around closing time, especially at a position of need. So I wouldn't count it out. And I would say I think maybe about a 30 to 35% chance.
Yeah, pictured with Walker White. Walker spent a ton of time with him. Walker was bouncing around to all the commits. Funny story, I put it in our game day recruiting notebook. I was talking to Walker. Think about making the state title game. Him and his team will play for the state title in Arkansas on Friday night. Right as Coen Eckles walked past to my left, and Walker says, "Hold on one second," and sprints after Coen Eckles. He's yelling at him, trying to go catch up with him. That was what Walker was doing all day. He was running around trying to talk with guys, everybody that he possibly could. He was hugging people on staff that I had never even seen in Auburn before. He knows everybody now. I just thought that was kind of funny. But here's a question from Corey. We already answered the first one about Damen Craig and Cam Coleman being there. It's a huge boost for Auburn with Damen Craig no longer being there. And then the second part, how much of a pipe dream is Riley Leonard, the Duke quarterback, if he were to go into the transfer portal?
Yeah, if it were to happen, I don't think it would be a big pipe dream. Kids from Fairhope came to Auburn basketball camps. That's the first place I saw him. I saw him at basketball camp at Auburn 2 summers in a row. The question I have is would he do it? I'm just not certain that he's going to be a portal guy, even with a coaching change. He could be, because it's enticing, but he's also a kid that is probably fairly close to getting his degree from Duke and being able to do something, and is going to be a draft choice there, coming back off an injury. So I just haven't been convinced that he's a guy that's going to go in there. But if he does, I think it could be somebody that goes after. But I'll tell you this, I'm firmly 100% convinced that Auburn believes they can win with Peyton Thorne. I don't think there's any question about that. Now, do they think he's a Heisman Trophy winner? Probably not, but you don't have to be a Heisman Trophy winner. They feel like they get better players around him and they can continue to improve, that's a guy they can win with. And so the question is going to be what happens at quarterback. And that might open the door for a potential portal guy, because I think all of us can probably agree that it would be a surprise if Robbie Ashford is at quarterback for Auburn next year. Now, he might still be on the roster, but if he is, it's probably going to be, hey, you're going to have to make a move and see if you could be X, Y, or Z, whatever it is. But the key is going to be probably Holden Gardner. If Holden Gardner returns, and all indications are that he's really been happy and he's going to have a shot and he continues to develop, I think Hugh Freeze felt like to me Monday that a lot of the things he was saying were directed at Holden, even though he didn't say his name. Going, look, continue to develop, and you're going to be a good football player. We feel like, so you got Hank Brown coming in and you got Walker White coming in. You would have 4 quarterbacks coming in. But if Holden were to bolt and say, hey, I want to go somewhere else, then you absolutely would have to go get another experienced guy, in my opinion. So that might dictate what happens in terms of a portal quarterback.
Shout out to Ferg. He's in the chat. Jason, one of our road trip buddies, we've tagged along with him, and he's tagged along with us for different trips throughout the year. That's one of our guys on the Auburn beat.
Ferg is getting some rest. Well, getting used to the time for late basketball tomorrow night because it's going to be a late tip-off for the Tigers.
Yes. Let's see. Here's one from Samuel. Is there real smoke about DC as in Damen Craig coming back to the Plains? I mean, there would have to be an opening on staff, which technically I guess there is with Wesley McGriff moving into an off-the-field role, but I don't know how he would really fit in with this group.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing you have is you have analyst roles and you have all these things going on, and I would never say never, but it doesn't feel like it at this moment. But hey, who knows? I guess it's a possibility.
I will take this question from Kyle. Thoughts on TJ Lindsey? Lots of talk about Texas pushing for a flip. I talked with TJ after the game. Texas is indeed still pushing and trying to work for a flip, and he said he might go out there for the Big 12 championship game this weekend, but that was not fully confirmed. He said he had talked with Auburn well before about that, and that it was not really a concern from Auburn's side. They were kind of telling him, you only get to enjoy this process once, and we trust you to go out there and have a good time, but still be committed to Auburn. And he chose Auburn over Texas really the first time, so there's not a whole lot of concern there. I think obviously it's one to monitor, and that's why you're asking the question, but I don't think it'll be a huge concern down the line. Now, if he makes it this weekend and if the visit goes really, really well, maybe it is worth keeping an eye on more so, but I don't think it'll be a huge deal. Jason, this is another one that we can hit super quick because we saw him play a couple weeks ago. Is Auburn planning on signing any kicking specialists, specifically Towns Magoo, the Auburn high kicker, who is really, really, really good?
If they are, it'd be him because he is about as good as it gets. And obviously Alex McPherson is really good. And I think it's closer to happening than people might believe. Alex McPherson he's just in his second year, but he's a guy that could be a 3-and-done kicker. And it doesn't happen very often, but with the connections with his brother in the NFL, with Evan McPherson kicking for the Bengals, with his accuracy and the things we've seen. I mean, knock on wood, which would be my right here. I mean, that guy had missed a kick since he's been at Auburn. That's what you are as a kicker, and he's got the leg strength, and he's just continuing to mature right now. I mean, he still looks – he might be up to 14 or 15 right now, but he still doesn't look like he's a college kicker. You might have that door where you say, hey, look, come in, redshirt for a year, then you're our guy, or come in and be our kickoff specialist in year number one, and you're our guy. I would not be shocked at all to see Auburn go, especially maybe here toward the end, say, look, we got a spot, Towns. We're going to give you a scholarship. Come on, because he has as strong a leg as I can remember. And we've seen, I mean, I'm thinking back to Wes Byram, Cody Parkey, Daniel Carlson, Anders Carlson, McPherson. There have been some guys that can bomb it. And Christian, we saw Towns Magoo 56 yards, Dukes, and he kicked it probably 25 or 30 feet up the net. It was about 10 to 12 feet behind the goalpost. It absolutely, and he doesn't use the tee in high school, so he kicks it off the ground. It was easily good from 68 to 70 yards, in my opinion.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I think it's right there, and could be a possibility.
I personally, I don't handle those decisions, but I think it would be a mistake if Auburn let him get away. I think you have to do what it takes to get, college kickers. It's the cliche. You could have a really good college kicker that you can trust, and that's a pretty big deal. Let's see. Any chance Falk reclassifies to the 2024 class? No, haven't heard that at all. Don't think that's happening. Here you go, Dukes. Here's a good one. Subscribe for Dukes' scoops, but here's the Dukes sample.
Yeah. We got scoops coming up tonight. Got some good ones.
Here's a question. What are your thoughts on the quarterbacks that have already entered the portal? Nothing against Peyton Thorne, but I think Max Johnson is really appealing for a quarterback competition. I think Max Johnson has already been linked to North Carolina, but we have seen some quarterbacks. We've seen Tyler Van Dyke from Miami, who took a big step backwards this year under Mario Cristobal. We've seen some names, Will Rogers as well, but nothing that really, really stands out to you, I guess.
Yeah, I like I said, I'll go back to my original thought. I think it all depends on where you are, because I think they feel like Holden Gardner is the guy that's their competition guy. in the spring, and you go, hey, here's your shot. This bowl practice time, I think they obviously been pointing towards trying to get him on the field some, and just wasn't able to do it toward the end of the year. I think no matter what, we would see Holden McGurner in a bowl game at some point to kind of give him some run and see what happens. But again, if he decides, hey, I'm going to go take a look somewhere else, then I think absolutely, then it opens the door for a lot of those names to be possibilities then.
We'll hit this question. Tumors Corner and Kyle were asking both about KJ Bolden. Any chance of flipping KJ Bolden, Zaquan Patterson, or Jeremiah Beeman? Jason, you've got some stuff on Beeman, and Dukes, you've been rolling with the KJ Bolden recruitment kind of the whole way. You've been ahead of everybody there. I did not see him there on Saturday. That doesn't mean he wasn't there, because there were about 300 people there on the sideline, but I don't think he made it in. Same goes for Zaquan Patterson. Dukes, your kind of quick thoughts on Auburn's chances with those two elite safeties, and then Jason on Jeremiah Beeman.
Yeah, with Patterson, I don't think it's as you'll see. I think Patterson is kind of contingent upon what happens in the room. I think as far as if there's any change as far as anybody jumping in the portal, and also what happens with Keontae Scott. Does he go to the league? Does he come back? You got Simpson, I think, has to go to the NFL now. The Simpson, and I think Puck is out of eligibility. And then you got DK to figure out what he wants to do. So right now, I think KJ is an automatic take if he wants to come. I mean, anybody in the country would take KJ Bolden. Some people on Twitter may have seen I was hanging out with his dad the other night, which was not related to recruiting at all. But we did, talk about Auburn, and he basically said, he was like, dog, it's KJ's decision. And he did not go to Auburn because he don't like Auburn. He didn't go because he was crushed about losing the game that night before. He didn't even want to talk to anybody. Buford lost a tough game to Grayson,
yep,
which is a huge rivalry out here. And KJ felt like there was a little bit of meat left on the bone as far as what they should have done and could have done. And he didn't really – he said, man, KJ really ain't talked to nobody for almost a day and a half. So, he wasn't there. But, that was kind of the reason that he wasn't there. And I wouldn't be – the rest of it will be in Duke Scoops. I'd say that.
Okay. There you go. Jason, you got a chance to talk with Beeman, and we're going to go and probably see him play on Friday night as well.
Yeah. I think Auburn's right there. I really do. I think this is one that probably in the next couple of weeks that we'll know whether or not it's and I think it's Auburn, Alabama. Alabama obviously been committed for a long time. Auburn's made a serious push and have said, hey, look, you're our guy. And the thoughts of adding Jeremiah Beeman to what they've already got and what they're bringing back is really intriguing. Because if you bring in Jeremiah Beeman, then you can do what I think is inevitable. Then you can do it quicker, which is move Kelcher Falk to the 3 technique. You can move him to straight up defensive tackle, weigh 285, 290, and be a lean, just pass rush guy. It gives you a lot more push inside. You play Jeremiah Beeman as a true defensive end at 265 and gives you that guy opposite your Jack linebacker. And, if you think about getting Jalen McLeod returning, which I think will happen, to go along with the guys that you've got committed in this class and Joseph Phillips and obviously Jamonta Waller, you start thinking about the difference in ability to get after the quarterback. And that's why Beeman has been a guy since these guys got here. They've said, look, hey, you're one of our guys. And they've made him a priority since then. I think it's still there. See if Auburn can get over the finish line, but I think they got a shot.
Yeah, you just touched on it a little bit, but Mark had the question, is next year's Jack linebacker on the current roster? Yes, I think Jalen McLeod will be back. Elijah McAllister is out of eligibility. Steven Sains, I think, has another year, just a depth guy, and then you're bringing in Waller and Joe Phillips. Maybe you bring in another experienced transfer to kind of play above those guys a little bit, but you feel pretty good about that room moving forward. I missed the question to actually put it up, but someone was asking about LJ McCray. Obviously, Florida had some changes on their staff, including their defensive line coach. Sticking with the defensive line, top defensive line target, the 5-star from mainland Florida that committed to Florida last month. Auburn is still pushing. You would think that staff change helps Auburn and the other schools like Florida State that are in pursuit at least a little bit, but it feels like Beeman as of right now is the more feasible target, I guess I would say.
I would say Florida State is probably a school that would maybe benefit more from this one in my thoughts on LJ McCray. I think Beeman more realistic chances for him, in my opinion.
Question from Sean. Jalewis Solomon sticking with South Carolina. He did not end up making it to the Iron Bowl. There was a little bit of buzz there for a little bit, kind of has died back down. I don't want to completely rule anything out because of how we've already seen this recruitment play out, but it does not seem like things are trending positively for Auburn there. Question from Leighton. Is the Zack Ethridge to Florida just hot board talk like it was with Georgia last year? Apparently Zack Etheridge's name has popped up on some Florida hot boards as they are looking for a new secondary coach after replacing Corey Raymond. Personally, without talking to anybody about this, no intel based, I would find it hard to believe that he would make a lateral move to a Florida program that is struggling right now. But he does have prior experience with Billy Napier, I believe, from his time at Louisiana. So maybe, but I'd be curious to hear y'all's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think for one portion of that whole decision-making process will probably be would he have the whole secondary at Florida? And if what happens with the secondary position, does he get split back to safeties and corners at Auburn? So I think if anything, that's one thing that I don't have. It ain't like I just talked to him about it, but just from some people around, some mutual friends that we have, like that's something that could be intriguing for people who kind of are around him. Not saying that's what he said. I'm not saying anything else, but I think knowing how Auburn's staff is going to shake out is going to have some type of impact if somebody wants to come in and say, I could see that happening where if he was relegated to safeties at Auburn and McGriff came back or somebody else had corners and Florida offers him a little more money in the whole and the autonomy in the whole back end of the secondary, then I could see it happening. But that would be the only way I could see it.
Jason, I'm going to throw you this question from Mark. What's the take on the future growth opportunity for Darren Lee? I think he means DJ Reed and Wilkie Denard. We saw Aniche Sledge and Steven Johnson enter the portal Monday and Tuesday, 2 reserve linemen, one a freshman, one a redshirt freshman who I don't think Steven Johnson played any snaps, and I think Aniche Sledge combined for like 11 snaps over the past 2 years, if I remember correctly from Nathan's story. And then these are 2 of Auburn's more highly ranked recruits in the 2023 class, neither of which saw the field, both of which ended up dealing with some off-the-field issues at different times throughout this season. But I think there is positive hope around Auburn for the future of these guys.
Yeah, I think, it felt like probably Darren Reed was the guy that had a chance to play the earliest, but wasn't able to get in for the spring. And so that set him back, some, because that's just such a valuable thing. We saw the difference in it for Keltry Falk this year, being able to go through spring and being able to do those things. I think both these guys, again, we mentioned a guy like Holden Gerner. I think there's a lot of these young guys that this next, 3 or 4 week period is going to be really valuable for, to kind of see, okay, where are you now? And it's hard. It's really hard when you're on the scout team and you don't get those reps. You feel like I've just kind of wasted a year. And so this bowl practice time is going to be really good for them and the coaches to go, okay, where are we? Where are you now that you've had a year of strength and conditioning? Even during the season, it's not like these guys don't do those things. And so where are you and what do we need to get to between now and the spring? And so, well, they both look good. Wilkie Denard looks every bit of it. And we're talking about a guy like, Jeremiah Beamer. Wilkie Denard's a guy that could slide into that role too. He's probably 280 or so right now. It looks good. Darren Reed's, big kid too. So it's a couple of guys that give you a chance to jump in and see how much of an impact they could make, between now and really in the spring.
Here is someone that we surprisingly have not talked about yet, and we can probably wrap it up, going in depth on this one a little bit. Here you go. Ryan Williams update. What's the latest on Ryan Williams? Someone says Ryan Williams is sticking with Bama. Be hopeful for Cam and holding on to Perry. That one I would disagree with. And then Kevin Barnes, is there enough wide receiver room for taking both Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams? So we'll get to the Ryan Williams segment of the show. The 5-star Alabama wide receiver commit out of Saraland. He is currently committed to Alabama, has been so for a little over a year now. He's in the 2025 class, but we've talked about it on the show. We've talked about it on the board as well countless times. We even talked about it with him on Saturday, that he is considering reclassifying, as in moving up to the 2024 cycle, graduating high school a year early, and he would enroll at his program of choice next summer. If he's able to do that, he plans to have an announcement sometime in December. So within the next month or so, you'll be able to look out for that. And then the month of January would become the Ryan Williams sweepstakes, as he would be able to take official visits. He said that Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, where his quarterback teammate, KJ Lacey, who's on the screen, is committed, and USC are kind of the main five. It's really the in-state schools, Auburn and Alabama, battling it out. Jason, I'll start with you, and then Dukes, I'll get your take as well. He's obviously committed to Alabama. Auburn has made a huge push here. My quick take would be to disagree with Chris's comment that Ryan Williams, not to disagree completely with that he's sticking with Bama, but to completely write it off would be wrong.
Yeah.
And I do not think you should be writing this one off in the slightest.
Yeah, we can answer the last question first really easily. Auburn absolutely would have room for Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams both. There's no question about that one. That is 100%. If both those guys said we're coming, they would both be on the dotted line. Absolutely. No, I agree. I mean, we've talked to Ryan Williams a bunch, and he's never backed away from giving us his thoughts on Auburn. And he is intrigued by Auburn and Hugh Freeze and Marcus Davis. And I think being able to show some signs of life in the passing game down the stretch was a big deal. But you also saw, look, hey, there's things that they left on the table because they don't have guys like this. Of course, not many people have guys like this. So I think Auburn's in there. And, I think we've talked about this the last couple of times. I thought if it moved up, it probably hurt Auburn's chances. And now I'm exactly the opposite. I think Auburn gets helped if he moves in the 2024 class because he's really close with Cam Coleman. He's really close with Perry Thompson and Bryce Kane and those guys. I think that would help Auburn's chances. And I feel like it's probably going to happen. I think we'll probably get that announcement sooner or later that he's going to move up to 2024. And you're right. The January becomes a wild time.
Yeah. Dukes, your thoughts on Ryan Williams and Auburn's chances there?
I think when you have these type of players that come out, and I know it's a word that we throw around all the time in recruiting, and we misuse it and abuse it, but generational. I haven't seen a lot of people that can move like Ryan Williams with a ball in his hands. I mean, it's just he's absolutely electric. I think, and when you get guys like that come through their home state, you can never count out Auburn as far as what they are, how much they value a guy like that. And so to piggyback on what Jason said about room for he and Cam Coleman, I mean, depending on who you ask, he could come out in he could come out in this class and legit be the highest ranked receiver. It could happen depending on who says what. And I think his grade is a 98. By the time they do this again, and I think there's another spring update, is there? Or the final rankings update?
For the 2024. Yeah, I think they finalize it after that February signing day.
Right. He could end up being the highest rated receiver in the 24 class. He still got, a state championship game to play maybe next week or the week after?
So they'll play Pike Road in the semifinals this Friday, and then if they win, they'll play the winner of Clay Chalkville and Parker.
Yeah, so he still got 2 more games worth of film to put up. I just think that for a talent like this, you will absolutely see Auburn push to the end. Do I think it's beyond the realm of reality? Absolutely not. I mean, he is a legacy. His dad had he understands Auburn in a way that most of these 5 stars that they're recruiting wouldn't. And I think Auburn has a real shot. His closest relationship, from what I hear, at Alabama is with not the position coach, but Javarius Robinson. Now, I did hear that he was intrigued about trying to figure out who would actually be the quarterback next year, because he plans on playing day one. So I think that if he were to come out in February, let's say, and don't quote me here, and I'm not saying this would happen, but let's say Auburn does go after one of the premier quarterbacks and lands him. Does that change how Ryan Williams feels about Auburn's chances to throw the ball next year? And not to say that he doesn't like Peyton Thorne. I'm not saying that at all. But for a guy like Ryan Williams to think that I'm probably one of the best players, high school players ever in the state of Alabama, I mean, he kind of would have that type of mentality. Like, I want a guy that I'm 1,000% sure can get me the ball. And I think depending on what Auburn does in the transfer portal, I'm not saying that he wouldn't commit with Peyton Thorne, but I think going to get one of those marquee quarterbacks that could be in the portal, and there are a few more looking at the portal, Riley Leonard definitely being one of them. I think some guys could move the needle in that recruitment. And I think that Ryan Williams is 1,000% on the board. And I have been saying this for weeks that I have been hearing that he was definitely reclassing. So I think that announcement will come. Like, what was it, like a announcement or something?
A reclassification announcement. We'll just go with that. I don't know how you would want to coin it.
Yep. So I think that'll be. I think it's supposed to be coming up in the next couple of weeks, right? After the game.
I would imagine after his state title game. Assuming they make it, I would assume he'll get through his junior/senior season and then make something official one way or the other. Then I think that's
for sure.
We'll hit a couple more questions real quick. Here's one from Toomers on that topic. Is Ryan, I'm assuming Ryan Jr., his dad is also named Ryan Williams. Is Ryan an Auburn fan? I can't speak on the kid's behalf. What I can tell you is talked with Ryan Sr. a little bit before the game, and he's absolutely still an Auburn guy, even though he ended up transferring out after a couple of years within the program. But then the other key thing is, I put this up on the board, he's letting his son go through his own recruitment as well. And that's the key there. So we'll hit, where did this question go? From Mark. There it is again. What's been the opinion of how the O-line transfer from Northwestern looks, potential to start next season? That is Dylan Senda, who arrived right at the very beginning of fall camp, Jason. And I think this is a guy that Auburn does like as a guy that could at least be in the 2 deep next year in terms of maybe being a rotational guy, maybe a starter.
Yeah, I don't think starter yet. I mean, this is a guy that was a true freshman last year, so he just jumped from boom to boom. And so now, and again, I just talked about how difficult it is. It's really difficult when you're not in the rotation to develop and to get those things. So I don't think he'll be a guy that'll starter to be challenging for a starting role, because here's the reason why. Think about Auburn's offensive line right now, and you think about, okay, Conley already sliding in there at center position. Jeremiah Wright had probably the best game he's had at Auburn against Alabama the other day. I thought he played really well and is just now kind of figuring it out. I mean, he's had injuries. He's kind of rotated back and forth. Jeremiah Wright's a guy that now has a chance to go jump out there and really grab one. The other guard position is intriguing, because I think Auburn would really love to sign a tackle to come in and slide in at left tackle to move Dylan Wade inside the guard. I think that's the ideal spot, because that's his NFL position. He's not going to be a starter in the NFL at 6'3" at tackle, but he is an NFL guard. Slide him inside the guard. They feel really good about too tall Isaiah Miller at right tackle. You got Tyler Johnson out there.
Muskie.
And you got Jaden Muskrat, who's a guy that can play tackle, probably better suited at guard, just like Dylan Wade is. You've got a lot of pieces in place for this offensive line. If you can find that true tackle, and that leads us a little bit, Christian, some news you had. You might find that guy at the junior college ranks, and they're looking for, because that left tackle guy is a different athlete. You got to be physical and athletic and be able to move. And Auburn's offered a guy that could fit that role if they're able to get him. A couple of guys, really.
Yeah, Seth Wilfred from Snow College. Offensive line coach Jake Thornton is set to go out and watch him play. I believe his game is this Sunday in Iowa. So Jake Thornton's going to go and see him play this weekend. And then Seth confirmed that he's going to take his official visit to Auburn this upcoming 2 weekends from now, December 8th through the 10th, I believe it is. This is a guy that Auburn likes quite a bit. 4 years to play 3 out of the JUCO ranks. Jason, we were trying to figure out his story a little bit because he looks really good. He has really good size. And he came from Bishop Gorman High School, a powerhouse in Nevada. And figuring it out a little bit more, he moved from Nebraska to Bishop Gorman. And that's such a loaded high school that he kind of just got buried there a little bit and didn't really have a chance to put much tape out. Ended up at Snow College and very quickly became a top target for a lot of schools, including Auburn. And then the transfers as well, had the news up as well that Auburn offered Jaquan Scott, the former Southern Miss offensive lineman. He's a guard pretty much all the way, originally from Davidson High School. And he confirmed with me that he plans to visit next weekend as well, December 8th through the 10th. And then Auburn also offered Easton Kilty from North Dakota. Don't know if he is going to visit or not, but that is another transfer to track. We'll hit this last question here from Kevin real quick. How impressed are you with the freshman players who made an impact this season? He lists Keldrick Falk, Kay and Lee. Jeremiah Cobb should be in that mix as well. Connor Liu should be in that mix as well. And then could there be similar production out of incoming freshmen as in the 2024 class? I think absolutely there is. I think there's a lot of guys in the 2024 class that could have that impact. I think at wide receiver, every single guy that Auburn has committed and the 2 guys that Auburn is still after in Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams, I think all 5 of those guys, if you got all 5 or if you just stuck with the 3 that you have now, I think all of those guys can be an impact. I think Jamonte Waller and Joe Phillips are impact guys, a jack linebacker. I think TJ Lindsey has a chance to compete and be an impact guy along the defensive line. DeMarcus Riddick and DJ Barber will rotate in at linebacker, I would imagine. And Laquan Robinson, absolutely, the JUCO safety. Probably all of those DBs will at least have a chance because, Dukes, we were talking about it earlier in the show, you might be overhauling almost your entire secondary going into next season. So whether these freshmen are ready or not, some of these 2024 guys, they're probably going to have to at least compete for those spots. So one last question from the chat. DeAndre Carter still solid, offensive lineman from Mater Dei, California. He visited this weekend. Yes, still solid. He made his quote-unquote final decision a couple weeks ago and chose to stick with Auburn instead of Texas. Guys, we will wrap it up there. A little over 40 minutes. Any final thoughts from Dukes, Jason, anything that we missed? There's a lot that we missed, but there's no way we could go through every single name and every notable visitor that was here this weekend.
Yeah, I think the only thing is Auburn is really putting a lot of effort into the 2025 class already. And it's really something to behold, especially when how many times did we write about guys last year and say that Auburn came in late? They got a late start. They were fighting an uphill battle. So, and I think that's something that if I were to say one thing that I really think that Hugh Freeze and this new staff is doing well is getting a hold of the 25 class, getting commitments, and starting making plans earlier for guys that you feel like may be those type of kids to ride it out the whole way. And I think, Alvin Henderson being on the horizon may affect your recruiting in the 24 class, just to be honest. So if he's coming, it allows you to be a little more selective in the 24 class and not just take a body, especially with what you already have. So if I were to say anything, just kudos to the staff on getting an earlier start in the 25 class.
I agree. I think it's just been work. It really has, to see them doing the things they've done, getting guys on campus, building the inroads, and we saw it at the end of the cycle last year in just a month's time. Keldrick Falk, Kay and Lee, Connor Liu, 3 guys they were able to flip from power programs. All 3 of those guys started games and played a significant role as true freshmen. We saw it in the summer. We saw Perry Thompson. We've seen, DeMarcus Riddick's a guy that was right there, committed to Georgia. Joseph Phillips, everybody thought was headed to Georgia. They're able to get those guys. Now you've got an opportunity to grab maybe a couple more of those guys here late and do it. I wouldn't bet against them. You mentioned Hugh Freeze and this staff. Relentless is the word. And I think kids saw where they are and what's needed to get to the next level, because it's about that. And I talked to David Ross on the sidelines Saturday, former Auburn player, Cubs manager. And I've kind of talked about it for years, and he started laughing when I said it. I was like having great players doesn't guarantee that you're going to be great, as we saw with Texas A&M. But not having them makes it impossible to be great. You can do all the things you want to. You can be the greatest coach in the world. If you don't have great players and you don't have a bunch of them, it's hard to compete, because Nick Saban won a national championship at LSU, went to Alabama, went 6-7, lost to Louisiana Monroe. Same coach, same guy, same hard nose, tactician, all those things. You have the same players. That's it. And Hugh Freeze realized that. This staff realized that to get to where you want to go, you got to have dudes, and they're trying to get them.
Yes, they are. And we have all of that coverage over at auburnundercover.com. Guys, if you're watching this right now, really appreciate y'all tuning in. And if you're not a member of auburnundercover.com, you have a little under 2 hours, if you're watching this live, to be able to join us for our best deal of the year. Cyber Monday, Black Friday kind of special, 75% off an annual sub, less than $27 for a year's worth of content, and to be able to join our message board, get access to the Duke Scoops that's going to be posted tonight, get access to all of our sign-in day coverage that we'll have, all of that stuff. I think it's like 7 cents a day. I mean, you should be able to find that if you're not a member. I would definitely recommend joining us for the next month at least alone. So really appreciate everyone that was tuning in and that watched us here. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube, definitely make sure to do that. That's totally free. That doesn't cost you anything. And we're pumping out a ton of content over here. We'll be back probably next Tuesday as well for another live show. By that point, we'll have probably a lot of transfer portal stuff to talk about, which should be entertaining, more so than we even had today. So appreciate everyone tuning in again. If you're listening to this later on, appreciate y'all listening, and hopefully we'll catch you in the live stream next week. We will see you guys soon.